of Explore the World Live. We are super happy everyone could join us this evening. We know that this week has thrown a wrench into everyone's travel plans yet again, but the four of us have all personally traveled within the last month, and we really wanted to share some of our experiences about what it's really like to travel during the age of COVID-19, and to try and dispel some of the myths and the fears that people may have about traveling right now. So it may seem to everyone that very few or no Canadians are actually traveling at this time. We can tell you that the airports are extremely busy. And up until the announcement of Omicron early last week, Canadians were really ready to start booking and getting out there and traveling once again. So tonight we're going to highlight some of our recent experiences to Europe and the Caribbean, and even domestic travel here in Canada, and to try and review some of the current protocols in place and how to enjoy a safe travel experience in the midst of all of the chaos. So we're going to explain some of the changes and the updates on travel restrictions in light of and the implications of yesterday's travel announcement, and then we'll go from there. So we're going to start by just introducing ourselves. I'm Joanne with Curated Travel. I've been in the travel industry for 10 years now. The last 2 years have obviously been extremely challenging, no lies. Every week is a new something. And I'm not traveling over Christmas this year, although I wish I was. But if I was able to get away this Christmas, I'm going to say that I would really love to be exploring the Christmas markets in Europe and drinking the wine and sampling the snacks and the cheese and the treats and all that good stuff. Jennifer.
Great. Yes, thank you, Joanne. Jennifer McPherson, and happy holidays, everyone. I'm with Turnkey Travel, and yes, it definitely has been another twist in our roller coaster ride. But if I could take the family somewhere over the holidays, I think I'd like to take them onto the beaches of Hawaii, maybe do a couple of islands and visit some of the great local traditions, and of course get out there and do a little mele kalikimaka on the world.
Nicola.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicola, and I have been a travel advisor for 14 years. I think, like, besides going home to celebrate Christmas, I would like to go to Antarctica when it's summer there. So over Christmas would be great, and see some penguins, icebergs, and so on. So Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays from me, Sandi.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sandi Lang from Lang Travel. I've been in the travel industry just over 24 years. And if I was to take my family anywhere for Christmas, I would like to go to Iceland to see the Northern Lights and to soak at the Blue Lagoon while snow falls lightly on. That's what I would like. Happy holidays, everyone. So now we just have a few poll questions that I'd like to bring up. The first one, are you nervous to travel right now? So if you could answer the first one. And hopefully we can dispel some of those nervous thoughts over the next half hour.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll just wait for a minute while answers are coming in. We have a good mixture so far. So to the first question, are you nervous to travel? We have the largest response is actually no, which is great news. The next slide, because all of the poll questions are coming up at the same time. Okay, are you planning to travel outside of Canada in 2022? And again, the largest response, 50%, was yes. So that is great news as well. And the third poll question is, what type of travel are you likely to book in the next 6 months? And surprising to, oh, answers are still coming in. I'll give it another minute. Oh, it's close. And the largest response actually is 40% is cruising, which is quite interesting. So thank you very much, everyone. And I'll just
Great.
close that
That's good
off
news.
and we'll go into travel rebound. So this is normally the part of the presentation where we normally review all of the current restrictions and updates. However, with the increase in the new variant Omicron cases, the current policies are changing on a daily basis, unfortunately. As I'm sure you've all heard yesterday, the Canadian government implemented a travel advisory advising against non-essential travel outside of Canada in effect for the next 4 weeks. Although this is an advisory only and not a travel ban, it may affect your travel insurance. So please follow up with your travel agent or insurer to ask if your coverage is affected by the travel advisory. So here are a few other tips and updates if you're traveling now or considering traveling in the near future. Be prepared for changes. If we've learned anything over the last 20 months, it is that changes can occur and the unexpected can happen. As travel advisors, we can certainly explain and will explain procedures that are in place today, but there are no guarantees that that won't change on before your date of departure. Do your own research and know the entry protocols, testing availability, forms, online registrations, online health questionnaires, airport procedures, etc. Every destination has different entry procedures. The more you know, the more you will feel comfortable and the smoother your travel will be. At Toronto's Pearson Airport, as of today, they're doing random testing for international arrivals. If you are chosen for a rapid test, you will have to isolate until you receive the results of that test, which could be 48 hours. If you receive a positive result of your test, you will have to self-isolate according to current government regulations. Remember, it is your decision to travel now. Take responsibility for that decision and then relax. Yes, there are different procedures to get through, but once you're in destination, it will all seem worthwhile. Pack your patience. Expect changes, frustrations, delays, lineups, and then you will be pleasantly surprised when all goes smoothly and you get through check-in and security in 20 minutes and you're sitting at your gate with lots of time to spare. Don't forget to download the ArriveCan app. Before you leave Canada, your information must be completed within 72 hours of your return flight to Canada. And don't rely on friend experiences or Facebook for information. Always check with your travel advisor and travel.gc.ca for current information. And you can also check on our websites for current travel regulations. All right, next slide. Okay, and now we go into the presentation portion of our experiences over the last couple of months. My first trip since January 2020 was to Cancun, Mexico with Palace Resorts. I have to say, it did feel a little bit strange, but very exciting to walk into the airport for that first flight. I had booked to fly to Cancun on Swoop Airlines out of Hamilton, but that flight was canceled as the Canadian government has only approved a certain number of Canadian airports for international travel. However, I did receive my refund from Swoop on my credit card within 48 hours, which was pretty impressive. So I rebooked with Air Transat and was very happy that I did that, as Transat was not filling the second or the middle seat on the flights at the time, which was lovely. My flight departed at 7 a.m. and yes, I was at the airport a little over 3 hours prior to departure. Mexico did not have any entry requirements or vaccine requirements, but there is an online health questionnaire to be shown upon arrival and departure. Upon arrival in Cancun, the customs hall did not seem as busy as pre-pandemic. You do need to present your Mexico tourist card, which you can get on board the airline, or you can complete it prior to your departure from Canada. I did mine online and everything was very smooth. From the departure in Canada to the hotel, everybody wore masks. Most of the people walking on the street in Cancun, most of them had masks on. Everybody was social distanced and safety procedures were very evident and very clear. During my week with Palace Resorts, we stayed at Playa Car and Sun Palace properties and visited Cozumel, Beach Palace, and my personal favorite, Isla Mujeres. The safety protocols at all of their resorts are very clear and I felt safe at all times. The Canadian government does require a negative PCR test or other acceptable molecular COVID test to be completed within 72 hours of your departure flight. Most hotels have testing facilities on site. It is best to arrange your test time as soon as you get to your hotel. My PCR test at Sun Palace was $115 US, and I had results back by email within 24 hours. Back at the Cancun airport for departure to Canada, along with my passport, I had to show my completed ArriveCAN app, proof of negative PCR test, Mexico tourist card, completed health questionnaire. There is also a tax, a visitor recovery tax, that all visitors are to show on their way going up to the gates at the airport. You can complete it as well online, which I did, and the cost was about $12 US. Upon arrival back in Canada, they were only allowing 50 passengers off the plane at a time, which was lovely because it meant there were no crowds in the customs hall and baggage was already off by the time we got down to the baggage hall. So it was quick and easy, no problem. Slide, Joanne. My second trip was a quick trip out to Vancouver Island to visit my mother, who I hadn't seen in almost 2 years. The float plane from Vancouver to Victoria was a little windy on arrival, but a good flight nonetheless. I had a great visit with my family in Victoria and Campbell River, despite driving through a BC weather bomb, which was a term I had never heard. And slide. And my most recent trip was a personal vacation with my husband that had been changed 3 times. Our booking was supposed to be for St. Lucia, but Sunwing canceled that destination 2 weeks prior to departure. So we ended up rebooking for Secrets Royal Beach in Punta Cana. And boy, were we ever happy with that property. Our flight departed at 10 a.m. We arrived again at the airport with more than 3 hours prior to departure. Like Mexico, Dominican Republic has no testing or vaccine entry requirements. Upon check-in, we did have to complete an e-ticket. This must be completed upon entry and exit from Dominican Republic. The airport in Punta Cana was quite busy, but everyone was wearing masks again. Secrets Royal Beach had very, very good safety protocols in place with all staff wearing masks all the time. The buffet restaurant was open, however, staff would place the food on your plates. The resort was beautiful, very, very wide stretch of beach, enough palapas for all guests on the beach. During our week there, the resort varied between 49 and 79% occupancy. There were a few hiccups getting clarification on how to book our PCR test for our return, but ultimately we ended up walking next door to the sister property, Dreams Royal Beach, to have our PCR test. The cost of that test was $80 per person. We did not receive our results by email, and we had to follow up with the medical center to get them to print off another copy. Upon departing from Punta Cana, you will need to show your passport, completed e-ticket, a $20 per person US departure tax, show proof of negative PCR test, and completed Arrive Cana. All in all, it was very, very easy. All three airlines I've been on have distributed sanitation kits, and everyone wore masks all the time except when they were eating or drinking. All the safety protocols were very evident, and everyone is working really, really hard to maintain that, that all guests are safe at all times. Thank you.
All right, so I'm up next. I was in Antigua for November 21st to 28th. So a negative PCR test is required to enter Antigua. So we've been talking about the changes. So when I traveled, it was no more than 4 days prior to arrival. And then since then, they've then put in place a rapid test that was started November 21st, the day after we got there. And they've already gone back to a PCR test taken no more than 3 days prior to arrival. So I think the point of that is just to make sure that the travel requirements can change to make sure that you're checking. So we did our negative PCR test, that was fine. And then once landing in Antigua, we had our temperatures taken and filled out a travel form, which seems to be pretty standard for most countries. Basically stating that we were currently healthy with no signs or recent exposure to COVID, and then we were on our way. We did a split stay over the week, so 5 nights at the Sandals Grand Antigua, which you're seeing the picture there, and then 2 nights at a resort called Coco. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Sandals did provide ground transportation, meaning they had group shuttles going back and forth to the resort. My husband and I opted to hire a private transportation so that we didn't have to share a ride. It was about $60 US for a private driver, which I thought was worth it. All of the airport staff was fully masked, the driver of the vehicle taking us to the resort. And then once we arrived at Sandals, all of the staff wore masks the entire time. The check-in went very smoothly. The room had been completely sanitized for check-in, and then I had packed Lysol wipes because I'm nuts and just made sure that I was wiping down all of the high touch points. A quick run through the room, like the TV converters and the light switches and all that kind of stuff. So that isn't necessarily necessary. Just those are my idiosyncrasies, if you will. But once we checked in, that all went smoothly. And then the Sandals staff just directed you to go and make sure you set up your PCR test on check-in. So I think that's a good advice, not to leave it till your the return day or the day before. You want to get that set up when you check in, not when you're checking out. PCR testing at Sandals is complimentary. And basically you go to the medical clinic and you give them your flight time and they assign you a date and time to come back to the clinic for your PCR test based on that flight time. So Sandals itself is a large 5-star properties, and there are 12 restaurants to choose from. I would say that 9 of the 12 restaurants were open air, so we were able to dine outside for almost all of our meals. So the only indoor restaurants on the property were the Italian restaurant, the English pub, and the teppanyaki sushi restaurant. So the other 9 were all outdoors. I really love that about this property. The weather was perfect. I love alfresco dining. And so the ability to eat most of our meals outdoors was perfect. The resort had about 80% of the visitors seem to be from the UK, and then about 15% American and a smattering of Canadians, the rest of us. And then there were lots of fire pits and outdoor eating, sitting areas to enjoy the nightly entertainment or a glass of wine, lots of places to socially distance. If you've never been to a Sandals resort, it is known as a luxury included vacation. So they have tons of excursions and activities included, including snorkeling and scuba daily. Although for me right now with COVID, unless you had your own personal snorkeling equipment, which lots of people do, I wasn't really wanting to share snorkeling equipment. So I was happy just to lay on a beach and read, but they do have lots of stuff, and they have kayaks and catamarans. We were able to take out all of that stuff, and it's all included. So our last day at Sandals, we basically arrived back to the health clinic at the assigned time to get our PCR test, and extremely efficient from the beginning to end. We were in and out of there in less than 10 minutes. So I think a lot of people have heard that it takes a long time or you have to give up a half a day to get that done. No, it was 10 minutes in and out, and we were back sipping cocktails. Results did take the full 48 hours to come back. And we were supposed to receive them by email, just like Sandi said. They did not come by email. So they were like, oh, if you don't get it by email, just come back to the clinic and pick up a paper copy. But we'd already checked out and gone to another resort. So for us, I had asked to get the clinic phone number before we left so that I was able to call, and the nurse sent them by email. But again, they tell you they're coming by email. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. So and then our last 2 nights were at a little boutique resort called Coco's. If you have never heard of it in Antigua, take a minute and check out their Instagram page. It is an adults only rustic boutique, all inclusive property with 35 individual cottages. Each cottage is air conditioned and has these beautiful vaulted ceilings. It has a gorgeous patio with hammock and 2 Muskoka chairs. It's perfect for enjoying a glass of wine or your morning coffee. Many of them faced westward, so it's great for watching the sunsets. They're very simple rooms, but beautifully appointed, and they have these vaulted ceilings and an open air shower, outdoor shower, which was really kind of cool. So there are only 70 guests. It's 35 of these little tiny cottages. I'm going to this is a map of the resort. And there's only one open air restaurant, but that restaurant can accommodate. So this little area, that's the restaurant, the check-in area, and it overlooks the water. It's completely open air. They can seat all 70 guests at the same time. So they have a rotating menu with different specials so you don't get tired of the food. And there are 2 beach grills. These are both of their beaches. This is Jolly Beach, which is arguably one of the most beautiful beaches in Antigua. And this beach over here is called Valley Church Beach, which completely faces west. And all of these rooms here along here face west as well. So they have spectacular sunsets. So it's not for everyone, this resort. It's not for people with mobility issues. There's lots of steps. You can't tell maybe from the picture, but it's quite hilly. But it's really meant for relaxation and just for enjoying the beauty of the island and the beauty of the resort. It was a lot of fun. I would go back in a heartbeat. Our return flight to Canada was delayed by about 4 hours, because why not? But luckily we'd found out before we left the resort. So we had 4 hours of beach time. And then once we were at the airport and we were in the air, the trip was smooth, and we were through customs and having pre-filled out, again, that ArriveCan app that Sandi was mentioning, we were in and out of customs in 10 minutes. So again, I was really nervous about traveling. I'm not going to lie, but I'm so glad we did it. It was super relaxing once we were in destination, and it was nice just to feel the sun on your face and the sand between your toes for sure. Jen, tell us about your experiences.
Great, thank you. Yes, well, we'll start off with the fact that we'll go back there. The first day, perfect. So I have been back and forth to BC half dozen times since the pandemic started. I had a first flight literally when we were in full lockdown in last May, and have been back and forth since. I actually drove even out to BC last summer. So I've experienced a lot of the West Coast, and also took some time this summer in Alberta. So I really have seen it right through the full breadth of when the first lockdown happened right up until now. And I can say that domestic travel has changed quite a bit from when I was one of 6 people on an entire, 777 aircraft going out. But now we are looking at a domestic travel situation where everyone does have to be vaccinated in order to board a plane, train, or a marine vessel here in Canada. So that has changed things quite a bit from a safety point of view. You should definitely feel comfortable flying anywhere that you want. We will see how the vaccine passport, the universal one across Canada, will change over this upcoming summer, because we still had some provinces and territories that are a little bit more vulnerable, particularly our ones out east, that may still have some additional work that you need to do in order to be accepted to go in if they have a small capacity like PEI, which had a PEI pass where you had to submit and be approved to get that. So if you were thinking of, say, perhaps domestic travel next year, you still will want to double check to make sure that each province has something. So, but from there, you can see we spent some time this summer, Tofino and around the Nanaimo area. There's lots of stuff to do. We had some friends come out. Of course, you've got beautiful scenery, the ocean there, lots of great restaurants. The COVID protocols were pretty much the same as what they were here in Ontario. You would wear your mask when you were walking around. And then once you got to your seat in your restaurant, or you were somewhere that you were designated, then you could remove your mask. So that's okay. Next slide, Joe. Just to show you a few, a lot of getting outdoors, which I think is really something that, whether you're looking to stay local or travel domestically or go abroad, we're seeing that as a huge trend. A lot of small group travel, a lot of outdoor activity, soft adventure, as they might call it. So we're seeing a lot of that happening, where people are wanting to not be necessarily into those tight cities with a lot of crowds, so that they are opting for a little bit more of an excursion-based tour. And that's definitely, you can do that anywhere across Canada. So here's some of the things we did: tubing down rivers, we did adventure climbing, we've done a lot of kayaking and a lot of hiking. So it's always great when you can get outdoors, and any one of us here can help you plan that type of getaway. And Joe, the last slide there was just my most recent one, was this fall, actually just less than a month ago. And we were, of course, on the island for a bit, and then I went over to Vancouver itself and spent a bit of time with some friends before I flew home. Really easy to get around Canada, because of course we're all on the same language, same currency, same cell reception for the most part, so you can really get around quite easily. And Vancouver was great to see it, as far as the lights and everything set up for holiday time. My trip that I was planning, and I was supposed to be just back from most recently, was a German Christmas market river cruise that unfortunately did get canceled. And those are the pitfalls that we're all dealing with right now. So we'll put that on the shelf for next year. And I did have clients that did travel this fall. You've heard some of the Caribbean stories. I had clients in Turks and Caicos, which is one of the last remaining Caribbean islands that is requiring full proof of vaccination to travel there. Most of the other Caribbean islands and countries have gone to now a PCR test prior to, if they're requiring any form of entry beforehand. But Turks is one of the ones that is requiring a proof of vaccination before you can even go. And it's quite regimented on what you do need to fill out, and have also proof of COVID insurance. And that's something we can talk about as well. There's a difference between your regular medical insurance and then also that you'll be covered medically for COVID. So that's something. And I also did a whole itinerary for a couple that went to Portugal for 3 weeks. They hadn't seen their son in Lisbon before the pandemic, and that was quite interesting. They were tested numerous times just because Portugal was changing things on the fly. So they went around to a couple different areas and had to be tested, but they also did a river cruise along the Douro, to which they were tested before that as well. But they felt safe throughout the whole trip. They were able to travel around a country like that. But even though Portugal required those tests, you had surrounding countries like Spain and France that did not require a pre-entry. So it's always good to know that destination requirement before you look at where you want to go. So Nicola, how about you?
Oh, thank you, Jen. So my first trip this year was to Alberta because I was going on the Rocky Mountaineer. And compared to last year when we went in September, October, the flights, we were on a Dreamliner, and the airplane was empty. This year we went in July, and the Dreamliner was packed. There was no space there, like people were on a waiting list. When we got to Alberta, I was also really surprised compared to last year. Nobody was wearing a mask, not even the staff in the restaurants, which was very surprising to me, as last year, even on the walkways, you had to wear a mask in Banff. And so my colleagues and I, we went to on the Rocky Mountaineer, and the night before we boarded the train, we had to get our antigen test done, and had to wear our mask on the train. And but otherwise, I mean, the cart was empty, and unfortunately our trip was kind of cut short because of the BC wildfires. So we got out in Kamloops, and then were transferred with buses. Like, we had a night in Kamloops, and then we're on buses going to Vancouver. And so we spent a couple of days in Vancouver, which was nice. I think what the message I received from the waiters and stuff, they were not obligated to wear masks, but they were still very much hesitant to not wear masks, and were always confirming with other restaurants what they were doing. So it wasn't like Alberta, it was still a little bit more like not stricter. I mean, they had the choice, but yeah, so it was a good trip. And then the next trip, thank you. So I hadn't seen my family in 2.5 years. And so finally I booked us on a Armour Waterways river cruise. And our daughter just went a month before us. So she went to Germany and came back 2 weeks before we left. When again, we were all of us were booked on Aer Lingus via Dublin, and just 2 weeks before our daughter was supposed to leave, the planes, the routing was changed, and the connecting flight from Dublin to Hamburg was cancelled, and we were rebooked on British Airways via London. So now we had to check out the new requirements, since the UK is not part of the EU anymore. Like, we were traveling with German passports. My daughter was traveling with a Canadian passport. And so when our daughter left, she only needed an antigen test to get into the UK. But she did a PCR test just in case things change again. When we left, we didn't need any test anymore, but we did the antigen test just to be sure. And when our daughter left, she was in line for 2.5 hours to get her document checked. So we thought we are smart, and we are there extra early. So our flight was leaving at 6:30. We were at the airport at 1:30. The BA counter was not even there yet. It wasn't set up. They came around like 3 o'clock, and we were the first in line, of course. And really, she just checked the documents. So we needed our proof of vaccination, a locator form for London or the UK, and a locator form for Germany. And that was checked within like 5 minutes, like really, and then through security to the gate, or we went to the airport lounge, it was less than 15 minutes. So it was a really good start. Once we were in London, nothing was checked because they checked everything here in Canada. In Hamburg, they checked everything again with the vaccination passport. It's also, one tip I can give, have your smartphone and have a European SIM card or whatever country you go to. You really do need it. And so COVID test, the forms were checked and we were through again. It was really, really fast. Masks are required everywhere, and in Germany and some other European countries, they have this rating. It's called, it's either 2G plus or 3G. And the 2G, like for example, if you want to go in a restaurant, it has 2G. That means you have to be vaccinated or you have to be have recovered from COVID. A 2G plus is you have to be either vaccinated or you are recovered, plus you have to have a test done. And the 3G is you have to be either vaccinated, recovered, or you can provide a test. So these are the main things. So from Hamburg, we went by train to Nuremberg, where my brother lives. And my brother already called me the night before that Bavaria was getting a little bit stricter again on the, not shut down, but to enter restaurants and trains and buses. So in Bavaria, we had to wear a KN995 mask, or in Europe, it's called an FFP2 mask. And so that wasn't a problem at all either. So we just showed our online COVID certificate and they checked it against our ID and we were good to go. So we spent some lovely time with my brother, and as you can see in the middle here, they were just ready for the Christmas markets. They were putting up the tree, and then just a few weeks later, they shut everything down in Bavaria. So no Christmas markets, nothing. So then we bought a Dama Prima, and again, wonderful, like all the staff needs to be vaccinated. They only take people that are fully vaccinated. Every second day, like the staff goes to every other day, has to do a test. We as passengers were just temperature checks every 2 days or so. And again, we were 63 people on that ship, which usually has 160. And we had to wait. No, the towns were empty. It's also the season, but for example, Rudesheim is usually really crowded. So my husband and I and another couple, we did a 10-kilometer hike through the vineyards with the guide. We had the guide to ourselves. One of my colleagues that strangely was on our cruise tour, which I didn't know, but we spent some time together. And she did in Würzburg, she did the residence palace, and she had the tour guide to herself because nobody else wanted to do the tour. So she did it on her own. There were her husband and another gentleman did the bike tour, just the two of them. So it's a great, now it's really a good time to travel if you're prepared to do the work, And so then the ship ended in Amsterdam, and so AMA Waterways offered to do the PCR testing for Canadians and US citizens on the ship, because we were flying via Amsterdam, Dublin, Toronto, and we stayed an extra night in Amsterdam. The timeline didn't work for us, the 72 hours, so we had to do it in Amsterdam. And the cruise manager, they are so helpful. They gave us the address and we just called, made our appointment. We had to wait 5 or 10 minutes because she was running a little bit late. got our test, got the test a few hours later, the results, and we were good to go. Amsterdam at that time too was kind of shutting down. All restaurants were closing at 8, so we had to be out by 8. Like restaurant had to be empty, and but it was a good trip. Like it was like I would do it again. Like, and so for example, with the COVID test, I forgot to mention the PCR test in Amsterdam was about 85 euros per person. On the ship, it would have been about 125. It depends on how many people take the test on the ship. But even if you're booked and you change your mind at the last minute, they don't charge you. Like you can do if you feel like it or you don't. I think that's it. So when we came back to Canada, one thing, in Amsterdam, like in Germany, we had no problem with our Canadian certificate, but in Amsterdam, you need it, and it's a weird thing. You have to download the French COVID app, and so then you get a barcode, and they just scan it with their phone, and it says like you get a check mark, kind of. So the flight from Amsterdam to Dublin was full, and the same from Dublin to Toronto. Whereas what everybody else here said, Sandi said, and with my daughter too, they only let, like in Toronto, they let only 8 rows out at the same time. However, when we came, as if it was a normal trip, like everybody got up and ready to go. And again, my husband and I, we have Nexus. We use the kiosk. We were at the carousel before the luggage even was there. And we got our green sticker, so no extra testing was required. And we were out again in like 20 minutes. Like it was fast. So it's just, as everybody else said, you have to really plan. You have to be prepared to have hiccups. And that's it. I would do it again. So that's it for me. So for next, are we doing anything in between, or is this the next slide?
No, because we did all 3 polls.
Okay, yes, okay, sorry. Okay, so next month, we would like to talk a little bit about the river cruises and the different cruise companies that are out there. So if you are interested, please join us. We would love to have you. And once again, like if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box, and please also check out our YouTube channel. And so once again, thank you very much for joining us today, and frohe Weihnachten, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, und frohes neues Jahr, and I see you next month, I hope. Bye.
Thank you, everyone, and we will stay on to answer any questions. If you have any, you can just unmute yourself or put it in the chat box, and we'll stay on for a couple of minutes to answer any questions. Thanks so much for joining us, and
Yes.
happy holidays.
Happy and safe holidays, everyone.